everyone. I'm Maddie Beanie, and this is the Safina Center. We're a conservation nonprofit that believes protecting nature starts with understanding our relationship with it. Through storytelling, science, and the arts, we explore the connections people have with the living world around them. And on this podcast, I will be sitting down with individuals from all walks of life to discuss how nature has shaped their lives and what those stories may teach us about our own place in the world. So, without further ado, welcome to the Safina Center Podcast. Okay. That's good. That'll be my slate.
There's going to be some chicken interruptions.
That's okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Safina Center Podcast. My name is Maddie Beanie, and on this show we are focused on answering one big question: what drives our relationship with the natural world? Today, I am speaking with Murray Fisher, the co-founder of the New York Harbor School and the Billion Oyster Project, an educator and lifelong advocate for environmental stewardship. So Murray, thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited as this is our second episode, but it's our first in-person conversation. And a little context for the audience: for all of our in-person interviews, I ask our guests if there is a place in nature that is of particular significance to them that we can try to do our episode in. And you chose a place that's very personal to you. We are in your backyard.
Yes.
Do you want to tell a little bit about why you chose this space, why it's so special to you?
Well, first, it's very convenient, so thank you for traveling all the way up here from Setauket. When we bought this place, we're in Bedford, New York, in northern Westchester. It's a beautiful historic property, and it was a farm, but had a lot of lawn. And so ever since COVID, one of my sort of hobbies has just been slowly rewilding 50% of it. So I was inspired by E.O. Wilson and Doug Talamy and the idea of reconnecting to nature in your backyard, and it's been a really thrilling process. And so hopefully we'll have a chance to go look around a little bit later at what we've done. But for me to be back here is a perfect place to think about my relationship to nature and how we've used this hopefully to help inspire others to create even more relationships with the natural world in your backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. And you started restoring this, you said, about 5 years ago.
I think in COVID, so I guess 6 years ago.
So do you have a moment where you kind of realized the shift in that, this is really becoming more of an ecosystem instead of just your backyard? It
was immediate and every day for the last 6 years. What's been wild about it for me is every place that I stopped mowing, or I planted a new native tree or shrub, or that I planted a little wildflower meadow, every day that I go out and look at it, which is, I try and spend about 45 minutes during the growing season, so say sort of April through October, out here doing a little bit of weeding and a little bit of observing. And every single day I discover a new species. So I'm up to over 2,000 species.
That's crazy.
And every day I'm amazed, and I have this crazy feeling, which is like, I've found this thing I didn't know existed often.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell the world about it. It's been a little bit lonely, and I sort of want to have the world with me as I'm uncovering all this incredible stuff in my backyard, because I want people to see that it can be really cheap and really delightful to bring nature back into what was once really manicured yard.
Yeah. A lot of people, I think, view conservation as something that happens far away from them, whether it's the ocean or a national park or something that just isn't even really possible in an urban place like how New York is.
Yep.
So what has it kind of meant to you to restore nature just right outside your backyard?
Same with me. I mean, I give Doug Talamy the credit with his book, Bringing Nature Home, that really helped me understand the impact we could have on how we selected plants in our yards. And then E.O. Wilson's Half Earth Project inspired me to preserve and rewild 50%, half of this. But yeah, for me it's been incredible, because I realize we think about nature as afar, and we think about going to visit beautiful natural places in Costa Rica or the tropics or South America or the West. And I have now created a nature preserve in my backyard. And so that's really the message that I want people to hear, is that with just a little bit of effort, you can literally bring that nature home. And I tell people that walking through, this is now, it hasn't really started blooming, but when this is in full bloom, walking through it is the same exact feeling as when I'm scuba diving on a coral reef.
Wow.
I see that many new things. They're that exciting to find and discover. They're that beautiful. They're mostly insects, and I didn't know about the insect world at all before this project. And now I have like 1,200 species of insects here. Every day finding new, and yet you don't have to travel to Costa Rica or the coral reef. You can do it in your backyard. And not only that, it's helping participate with everything is being logged on iNaturalist.
Oh yeah.
So it's sort of participating in this global science project of just understanding what lives where, and then how that indicates the ecological health of a place. So that's really what I'm trying to understand. It's sort of a beyond my yard level.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite creature that you found here, or someone that you...
Yeah, I didn't know anything about wasps.
Oh.
I just knew that the paper wasps were really angry, and yellow jackets, you step on them in the woods. I've learned about this group of wasps, the ignominids, that they're all parasitoids, and they all the females go and find a different insect species that they then put into their nests, and then they lay an egg on, and then that egg develops within that either spider, or often it's a caterpillar or some other kind of bug, or other bee or wasp. That family of insects has been crazy for me because I find pretty much a new one every time I go out.
Oh, wow.
And the wildest part is most people don't know what they are. So even on iNaturalist, all of my ignominid wasps that I've uploaded, most people can't identify them.
Oh, wow.
And it just helps me realize, wait, we're not educating young kids. Who's going to study wasps in the future?
Yeah.
Everything's sit behind a desk and do AI. So it makes me more motivated to think about how we're training kids for a sort of ecological future and helping restore the planet, monitor and help restore it.
Yeah. Do you think people are more likely to care about nature and conservation when it's in a closer proximity to them?
Yeah, I would hope so. A lot of people care about their local parks, but a lot of people want to manage their property so much and to fight the biological diversity everywhere that I do think it's a great place for teaching and learning about it, but it's happening really slowly, and it's going the opposite direction really quickly.
Yeah.
So what I see happening even in a place like Bedford is bigger lawns, more machines, more lawnmower hours, more weed trimmer hours, more leaf blower hours. These are mostly gasoline machines. More fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, more watering. People are putting in more sprinkler systems. To me, it's like witnessing the expansion of the lawn.
Yeah.
And that's already 40 million acres of that across America. And so I hope that we can be part of helping catalyze a movement for recreating these parks, these preserves in our backyards, because it is such a great place for anybody, especially families, to learn about the natural world. And it's been an incredible experience for me doing this with my kids and having them, they know way more about and are much more connected to the natural world than I was as a kid. And I thought that I really had a lucky childhood being outside a lot.
Why is it that you think, because I completely agree with you on what the future is looking like, but why do you think that modern kind of landscaping is focused so much on controlling nature rather than supporting it or working with it?
I think there's just sort of an innate fear that is part of being human, that is about controlling the wild and the dangerous, which I get.
Yeah.
But then that sort of has become part of our aesthetic and part of our culture in a way that is beyond what we need.
Yeah.
We have a lot of yard, so I get and appreciate and also value the aesthetic behind controlled yard safety from ticks or snakes or spiders in the house. I get that, and we have that. But I do think what I would hope that people reflect on is sort of, are there places where I can take my foot off the gas a
Yeah.
little bit and let nature come back a little bit? Are there parts of my yard or parts of my property or my farm or the park or corporate office parks, places where there isn't a lot of recreation? Kids aren't playing soccer there that often. It doesn't aesthetically matter that much. Are those places where we may be able to give that back to wildlife like this mosquito that's part of our podcast?
Yeah.
We actually, it's crazy. We have almost no mosquitoes here.
Oh, wow.
But we had rain all weekend long. And so there
Yeah.
are going to be these mosquitoes right after a big rainstorm.
Yeah. I just saw a chipmunk run past also.
Oh, nice.
But so much of this project, so your personal home, but so much of your work also professionally seems to really kind of have a focus on wonder and almost curiosity rather than strict, scientific regimen, if that makes sense. Do you think that wonder is something that's underrated right now in the environmental field in general?
I mean, that's a great point. I always wanted to be a strict scientist protecting the planet, or a strict environmental lawyer using the laws to protect the planet. And I worked for a group, Waterkeeper Alliance, that did that. But it never felt natural to me.
Yeah.
I was always someone who just was constantly excited about the natural world. And so for me, wonder is everything. I remember literally reading books about the ducks in the Chesapeake Bay, that just the incredible abundance of the fish and the ducks in the Chesapeake Bay near where I grew up. Those inspired me as much as anything. I was nostalgic for a time when there was much more wildlife and much more abundance, and that to me seemed like a cool and beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so to me, wonder is a critical component of all of this, and it's been nice for me to follow that and not try to fit into, because sometimes when I'm out here and I'm observing stuff, I'm wondering, is this art and I want to take a beautiful photograph, but that's not it? Is this science and I'm really interested in understanding the life cycle of this particular species? That's not really it. I'm just in awe that these things exist.
Yeah.
And I just want the world to know they exist. That's it. And I think that wonder is transferable across all people. I think E.O. Wilson said that discovery is euphoric. And you can discover thousands of species in your own backyard, and that is a lifetime of joy.
Yeah, I think so many people view science and art as kind of two separate entities, almost sometimes that they're clashing. And some people view science and art almost as partners.
Right.
Do you think they work better together, or should they be?
Always. I mean, thinking back, for me, one of the most impactful artists was, I'm going to mess it up, Ding Darling. He was an artist who, he was kind of a cartoonist who drew old cartoons about ducks and about duck hunting. I think art is the most powerful way to communicate. And so, I mean, talk about, like, where's the music in the environmental movement?
Yeah.
I think that without art, we won't be able to excite and bring that wonder, and I always feel like it's a really important element of any nature or environmental movement is to have the art inherent in it just as much as the sciences.
Yeah, I agree completely. So you grew up, like you said, loving nature, being immersed in nature, but you have also talked about how you really love a sense of community and connecting with people. Have those two things ever been in conflict for you, or have you seen those as kind of two conflicting desires?
I probably really felt that with the New York Harbor School, creating that. I loved being in New York City. I loved being around a lot of different kinds of people. I loved the challenge of trying to figure out how all these people can live in one concentrated place.
Yeah.
And that was, to me, a really exciting period in my life, being there and starting up the New York Harbor School. The goal there was to I'd worked at Waterkeeper Alliance, and I was frustrated that I didn't see a whole new pipeline for kids who were going to become future waterkeepers.
Yeah.
So the initial goal for starting the Harbor School was to help train young people to go into marine-related careers. And while working there for a long time, I sort of felt that push and pull between sort of community, where the harbor school, we were 500 kids and we were 50 teachers. We moved to Governor's Island, and it was really hard to not get involved in every kid's life.
Yeah.
And always felt like the righteous thing to do. There was always work to do and help to provide and support to provide. But at the same time, right outside the school was New York Harbor, which was supposed to be our classroom. And it wasn't a good classroom because it was totally inaccessible. It was polluted. It had nowhere near its historic abundance and biodiversity. And so I felt really strongly that I need to work to help restore this environment as much as I need to help figure out what's happening at home with the students who's struggling to come into school.
Yeah.
And that was for me the real push and pull between community and the environment. And it was difficult, but I started focusing more on starting the Billion Oyster Project to help make a clean and abundant and accessible harbor, not just in the end for the harbor school, but for the whole city.
Yeah. I think that was one of the first questions that came to mind when I started looking into your work. Was, I think, for the harbor school, my first question that came to mind immediately was almost, how does it work? It was, people see restoration, I think, kind of like I said in the beginning, as something that happens in national parks or in forests or things like that. So what does it mean to restore nature in a place that's so incredibly urbanized like New York City, that from the surface doesn't really look like there's much nature to restore in the first place? Yeah,
no, that was the answer to that was a multi-year journey. So if we sort of initially think, okay, so New York Harbor is our classroom, we want to get out on the harbor as much as possible, and a lot of our effort was figuring out how, as a public high school, to create programs that get young people out on the harbor every day. And then that was 7 years of traveling to the harbor. Then we got ourselves a new facility on Governor's Island, so the kids had to travel out there, but we had better access to the harbor. So then we started struggling with that, like, how are the young people involved in restoring New York Harbor? And we sort of looking back, we were inspired by the book The Big Oyster by Mark Kurlansky, which made it really clear that New York Harbor was an oyster-dominated ecosystem, and helped us understand that, sort of like coral reefs in the tropical waters, oysters play the same role in these temperate waters all over the world, but particularly in New York Harbor. So once we started understanding, wow, there were literally billions of oysters, 200,000 acres of oyster reefs, we got excited about what is our role in restoring them. So while my partner in starting the Billion Oyster Project, Pete Malinowski, and I, while we were sort of trying to figure that out, he was the aquaculture teacher at Harbor School. At the same time, Harbor School was developing these career and technical education programs, sort of like an updated version of vocational ed or trade school, where every Harbor School student had to choose one of 7 marine fields that they would focus on for 3 years, and then they graduate with a technical credential in that field. And the idea being that that they can go into, they have the entry-level skills to go into that job, into those jobs if they want to. So we were developing those, and kind of independently, a teacher, Rick Lee, started developing ocean engineering. Then we started developing a marine biology program, the aquaculture program, vessel operations program, a marine systems technology program, restoring the engines and working on the engines. All of these programs were developing by teachers who led them, who had that experience professionally, while we were developing Billion Oyster Project. And what was so cool is that each of those programs fit into Billion Oyster Project. So that the Harbor School Career Tech Ed programs, those students, their work was restoring a billion oysters. So the scuba divers were taking the oysters down and doing the monitoring, and the marine biology students were doing the ongoing monitoring of biodiversity and water quality at the reefs. We now have a welding and fabrication program that's building reef infrastructure. Aquaculture program grew all the oysters. So what an incredible thing that it gave real long-term purpose to those programs, and they weren't, all of them were kind of these silos at the school that didn't necessarily work too well together. Billion Oyster Project allowed them to all start working together, gave them all united purpose, elevated their work up out of the school into the harbor, And then also it provided a whole new source of funding through Billion Oyster Project for these programs to actually operate. So it's almost like we unintentionally, I mean, there's plenty of intent behind it, but we kind of designed a restoration army of New York City public high school kids, which is amazing. And really, what a cool place to do it. Like, you've got huge boats going by and cranes unloading container ships and ferries, and then kids restoring, and now they've restored 180 million oysters so far.
That's awesome. I think nowadays environmental messaging can really make people kind of feel powerless. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom around climate news nowadays, but your work and the work of the Harbor School kind of is the opposite of that. It really gives individuals a role in restoration. Why is that something that you think is important?
Yeah, I just naturally wasn't good at the doom and gloom. I just couldn't. I would get sad or discouraged, but the next morning I wouldn't have it in me. I would just want to go do something positive, and I just am lucky that way. I mean, sometimes I feel guilty that I'm not taking the reality of how discouraging it is and going out and fighting harder and stopping more of the destruction that I witness and see. But it just turns out that I think it's just kind of my innate personality is that I'm always optimistic, and I'm always trying to lay out a vision of something hopeful for people. Yeah. And so Billion Oyster Project definitely did that. This work that we've done, Rewilding, we've turned into a campaign called Less Lawn, More Life. Oh, awesome. That is happening, that there are now 30,000 people participating in it this summer. Even that is an example. I couldn't participate in a campaign called No Lawn, or Lawns, or Kill Your Lawn. Like, I just don't feel that way. It's not natural for me. But less lawn, more life. That's what it's very simple for me. The less lawn I have, the more life I have. So for me, I think it's really important to continue to give everybody lots of options, whether you're in a city like an Oyster Project, or if you're in the suburbs like your backyard, places where you can have a meaningful impact, and that you can take joy in participating, and that you can see the outcome of increased biodiversity. You know, Billion Oyster Project, we kind of lucked out because we were part of a whole wave of the improving water quality in New York Harbor. And it's meant that kids who participated in restoring those oysters and been to Harbor School are now seeing dolphins and whales and tons more fish and birds in New York Harbor than there were before. And so it's not necessarily directly correlated to the oysters that we've restored, but it's all part of an effort to make New York Harbor matter in the lives of New Yorkers. And that's happened, and people are aware of New York Harbor as it should be the biggest, best place for New Yorkers, for all New Yorkers, and for young people to go swim and sail and fish and not fear for their safety.
What have the young people, as you've been working through the Harbor School and the Oyster Project, what have they taught you about hope?
I mean, one thing that's funny as a parent is that the Harbor School students came from every single solitary kind of background in New York City, with easy childhoods and the hardest possible childhoods and everything in between, which was really cool. And no matter how difficult a childhood someone had, or how they were presenting themselves, the overwhelming majority of them were amazing kids who I would adopt any of these kids. And it's just, the youth are very resilient and can go through a lot of difficult stuff and still emerge as great contributing humans. And so that was really exciting. The other thing that was really cool about our career and tech ed programs that I loved was that they were really diverse in a way that academic programs sometimes aren't. Maybe in a math class or an English class, they'll naturally start to segregate based on how much math you know or how much English you know. But in the scuba diving program, you'll have every kind of kid with every kind of background, because none of them come knowing how to scuba dive. And so they're naturally really diverse, and there's something incredible about 18 kids from every different walk of life in New York City learning to scuba dive or weld or grow oysters or drive a boat together that I think helped fuel kind of extraordinary personal growth with those individuals.
Yeah. You said once, if I'm remembering correctly, when you were first planning and starting the harbor school, that coming from waterkeeper, the job that was consistently kind of dominated by older white men, and then it was such a shift starting the harbor school, seeing these kids that come from every walk of life. And you said that if you want to promote environmental conservation, you have to represent everyone.
Right.
So what is it that made you realize that diversity was so important in environmental conservation?
Well, it wasn't as much that I realized it in seeing the students of the harbor school. It was more that my role at Waterkeeper was helping these new waterkeepers start all over the country, all over the world. I helped over 3 years 60 new waterkeepers start. And they were mostly older white men who had a strong relationship to that water body and were raising their hand and saying, I want to protect it, and that's going to be my career, which was incredible, and I loved supporting them. But I was curious as why it wasn't more representative. And it just to me seemed obvious that if we wanted to protect our marine or natural resources in North America, we should have everyone excited about them. And we should have everyone trained to do it. And we should give everyone an opportunity to do it. And that was sort of the core of starting the harbor school, was to have, because I was in New York City taking the train up to White Plains to work at the Pace Environmental Law School for Waterkeeper Alliance for 3 years. So I was leaving New York City, and New York City is 1.1 million public school students, and 880,000 of them are students of color. How many of them are going to be these future waterkeepers? None. I didn't see how they would get there, and so it's kind of an obvious pipeline issue once we started thinking about it. And what's crazy is there's an awesome story of that, is that a graduate from our first class, Luis Melendez, so our first class started in 2003, graduated in 2007. He then went on to be a captain at New York Water Taxi and drove on the ferries around New York Harbor, and then Billion Oyster Project hired him to help out on the waterfront and driving boats. But he just got hired last year to be the riverkeeper on the Hudson River.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's driving the riverkeeper boat that in 1998 I moved up here from Virginia to restore.
Oh, that's
so
come
my first,
full circle.
I know, my first job. I don't know if obviously I've told my friends and we've talked about it, but my first job when I moved up here working for Riverkeeper was restoring the Ian Fletcher, which was the old fishing boat that is the patrol boat for Riverkeeper. And it was on that boat about 100 miles north of New York City that we were catching and tagging sturgeon. And I was in the middle of the river doing this with a bunch of state DEC scientists. I loved it so much. And I was frustrated that a kid who, since he's been 5, has wanted to protect the environment. And this, at age 23, was the first time that I felt like I was kind of really doing that.
Yeah.
And I just was overwhelmed with this feeling that school should be this work. You shouldn't have to wait till you're 23.
Yeah.
And so the inspiration for the harbor school came in that moment, and to have Lewis now back there, whatever that is, 20 years later, as the captain of the Riverkeeper boat is just the most amazing feeling in the world.
That's awesome. So do you think that humans in general, do you think that we are meant to be participating in the environment, or do you think that it's better for us to strictly observe?
I have this argument with a woman out here. She and I are big observers of the natural world and stewards of it, but also she's a really fierce protector of it, much fiercer than I am. And we have this, my point is like, get people, I guess what I argue is that you got to get people out into the natural world so that they fall in love with it. And once they fall in love with it, they have affection for it, then you protect the things you love and know about.
Yeah.
Her point, and she's not really wrong, is like everywhere humans have gone, they've actually destroyed it.
Yeah.
So her point is keep everybody in cities and protect everything else. I don't know the right balance. I know that I grew up on a farm, and I fell in love with nature because of that. And I can't imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't have been exposed to nature all the time. So I think it's a critical part of being human, that we really have a responsibility to give as many, especially young people, as possible. And it's hard because even moving out here, where one of the entire points of coming out here was for our kids and other young people to be outside and to be able to explore nature freely, and I'm nostalgic for my childhood. There's not a lot of that. Even in a place, like Westchester, there's a lot of, it's like you drive to school, you drive to your soccer practice, you drive to your friend's house. It's a lot more time in cars than it is in the woods.
Yeah.
So, and that's sort of a little bit of a design flaw, I think, of the suburbs, and something it's a new problem I'm trying to solve, is figuring that out.
Yeah. Do you think people underestimate how disconnected cities can be from their ecosystems?
Totally. Absolutely. I don't know how anyone gets a sense of what an ecosystem is. If you're living in a city, I think it's really lucky where you have places like big parks, like Central Park or Prospect Park. And I think we hope that New York Harbor can become a massive nature preserve that would be accessible for people and still have the commerce, still have the traffic, but also be a place for kids and people of all ages to get to know nature. And we hope that restoring the Billion Oysters and then keeping and sort of protecting them and continue to restore oysters will help New Yorkers learn more about and fall in love with their marine environment, because it's an incredibly rich one, an exciting one, and would be so much cooler if it were also abundant and biodiverse.
Yeah. You said, and I completely agree again, that suburbia has you really just kind of driving from place to place to place. And you've said before how you wish people could just kind of slow down and observe the world around them. Mm-hmm. Do you think that modern life is kind of what makes that difficult?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, our phones are so distracting. Our jobs, we are always driving places. There's plenty of time and plenty of opportunity. You know what's funny with my whole rewilding thing? The thing that helped spur it was once I started rewilding, I was curious about what I had. I didn't know about taking pictures. I didn't know anything about insects. Mm-hmm. I just knew that I was stopping mowing places, and I wanted to understand what's there. So I started taking photographs, and someone told me about iNaturalist. And I was like, the last thing I want to do is be on my phone, uploading things when I'm out in nature. But what I did is I deleted Instagram. And I immediately had 45 minutes to an hour a day. We have time. What we need to do, and this has been really hard for me, and I can't imagine how hard it is for other people, we need to train ourselves to pay attention.
Yeah.
Whether it's noise or family or job or social media or other stuff, it's really hard to just pay attention in nature. And that's something that I've trained myself to do. And it's sort of meditative for me to try to have 45 minutes to an hour, literally that same amount of time that I would have been just looking at what my friends were doing on Instagram. Yeah. Which I miss, by the way. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it's just it freed up more time than I thought. Yeah. I would, training people to slow down and pay attention and the wonder and joy that provides, I think is totally possible. There's plenty of time, there are plenty of opportunities. It's just the modern life seems to be increasingly distracted. Yeah.
I've started setting little timers on all my apps and things like that, because I've noticed recently how just mind numbing and time consuming all these little apps are.
I know.
And it's like, it's 4 p.m. and I haven't gone outside, and it's horrible.
Right. And you may not even be, this is a whole separate thing, you may not even be as productive if you would have been if it were all shut off for 8 hours.
Yeah. No,
that's
100%.
I think everybody's struggling with figuring that out.
Yeah. No, 100%. What is it that you think, because some people, it's kind of a running joke now that people will go out and say you need to go touch grass, or there's little terms now that it's like forest bathing is a term, going out into nature. What is it that you think people are really seeking when they do take the time to go out and immerse themselves in nature?
I really want to do the forest bathing. I feel like I probably kind of do it, but I've never actually done it. I mean, quiet is a big thing. I'm frustrated even now by the traffic noise. To be able to hear the natural world is so soothing. And we hear a little bit of it now. And, oh, that's a red squirrel.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a red squirrel, not that common actually.
Wow.
So I think that to hear it is really important. So I think, and then the other part is that for me, what happens. So I also go on a hike, often with our dog, but sometimes without him. And frankly, it's better. It's very meditative for me, and I know exactly what I'm going to do when I get back from that hike. I've laid out in my head my whole day. So I think it's a real luxury to be able to go on a hike in nature for your brain. It's very calming if you can listen to the natural world. I haven't read about it. I'm not sure what forest bathing does, but I think I would love it. And then for me, just discovering and documenting what I have in my best way to spend 45 minutes now is going out and just documenting what I have in our rewilded area.
Yeah. You mentioned, I wanted to touch on this earlier, when you were talking about the kids at the harbor school, how they're all great kids and you would be happy adopting any of them. Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, you have 3 children.
Right.
Has becoming a father changed the way you see environmental responsibility and conservation at all?
I mean, it's all much more personal because you're starting to think about their future. The thing I struggle with, I'm not sure if this is going to answer your question, but so my son said the other day, he's worried about falling any more in love with wild animals because he knows he's going to see fewer and fewer of them as he gets older.
Oh, wow.
And so I feel kind of bad that I've gotten them so in love with the natural world because it is diminishing. I mean, whether you like that rare little moth right there or a rhinoceros in Africa, it's all disappearing. Yeah. And that's heartbreaking for a child. And so, but I don't know any other way to be other than just being, I'm an observer and a seeker, and I do it with them. And they love all the same stuff that I do. But I think Aldo Leopold said something about the more of an ecological education you have, the more heartbreak you have ahead.
Yeah.
He didn't say, that's not actually what he said.
Isn't that sad, though?
The same idea is that the more you understand what's happening ecologically, the sadder it is because you see it collapsing everywhere. And by the way, that was him, 80 years ago. Yeah. Imagine now.
No, it's horrible. And I think about the harbor school, and you are very well known for saying that restoration without education is temporary. And so I'm curious what you think happens emotionally to these young students when you give them the responsibility of restoring nature and you not make them part of the problem, but give them the opportunity to see that they can be part of the solution. Right. Do you think that resonates more with them when they have that hands-on experience? Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's been too many years that I haven't been having these conversations with harbor school students, so I can't speak to. I left being there full-time in the end of 2017. But kids would, one student who was in the scuba program came up after scuba diving and helping plant an oyster reef. And he was 17 and he'd grown up in the Dominican Republic and he was taking off all of his wetsuit, and he had just helped restore as many oysters in New York Harbor as there had been yet. And he was just beaming and so proud. His name is Jerickson Picardo, and he ended up going to Hobart, getting a scholarship to Hobart. And then 2 years later, with a teacher from Hobart, trying to start a Rochester harbor school because he wanted so badly to replicate that feeling of you learn better and more when you have responsibility.
And one of our harbor school teachers, Brendan Malone, had such a good point. I think about it with my kids all the time. And his point was that we always bemoan that students are irresponsible, and all these teenagers are so irresponsible. And yet we as adults loathe giving them responsibility. And so a harbor school student will be a 16-year-old driving a boat with their 17-year-old students going down to scuba dive on the reef, and they have to hold that boat over the reef. Extraordinary learning happens in the marine environment, restoring nature with your fellow students. And I was so eager to see if that incredible magic that we pulled off with Harbor School and Billion Oyster Project was possible in other places, that I actually worked with a group trying to do it in San Francisco Bay, worked with a group trying to do it up the Hudson River, worked with Jerickson trying to do it in Rochester. Lots of other people have been inspired by it, but it's a certain, the Harbor School and Billion Oyster Project partnership in New York City is just so unique, it's hard to replicate it.
Yeah. You have spent the last so many years restoring oysters in New York waters. Do you think that there's any part of yourself that has been restored through your work, something that either you hoped you would achieve as a child or something you didn't even realize that you wanted to see change within yourself or your mindset that has come about from your work that you've done?
You know, one thing that happened with Billion Oyster Project was you were with Harbor School and Billion Oyster Project, every day we were solving a new kind of problem. And sometimes it was political, often it was fundraising, sometimes it was dealing with the Harbor School community or the education system or the school itself, or the bureaucracy trying to get all these things approved to do this work. And one thing was that I didn't do that as much as I kind of wish I had. And I didn't get my captain's license to drive the boat. I didn't do the scuba diving. In hindsight, one thing that I have a little bit of regret about is that I could have pushed myself further to learn and participate in all those things. I just felt so much responsibility for sort of the fundraising, the administrative, the bureaucratic side of things, that I didn't push myself as hard as I could have on those technical aspects of it. Pete Malinowski, my partner who runs Billion Oyster Project now, he grew up doing that stuff, so it was kind of more second nature for him. Yeah. But it's also nice to have, I'm actually just switching this away from myself to say, it's really nice to have a partner who was able to do all of that. Yeah. And so I just admired that he, went back and got his captain's license, and he did the scuba diving. And I think it's made him a more effective leader of Billion Oyster Project, because he's able to communicate with all the different parties because he has those technical skills. That's one thing that never seemed like there was enough time, but looking back, of course there was. I just didn't push myself enough to, frankly, I didn't like the idea of scuba diving in New York Harbor.
That's okay.
Have you ever scuba dived in
the harbor? No, but I would give it a whirl now, I think. Yeah. Would you try it now?
No.
Oh, okay. No. If you said no, then I'm retract my answer.
Well, no, I don't love scuba diving anyway. I get a little bit nervous underwater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. How about you?
No, I love it.
You love it? Well, then you should do it in New York Harbor.
I will.
I'll set that up.
Awesome. Okay. I'll count all the oysters.
In fact, maybe one of these you can do with someone at Harbor School or Billion Oyster Project. It'd be a nice follow-up.
Yeah, that would be
sort of get the updated reality.
Yeah.
Instead of my rose-colored glasses of how great it was.
That was a question I had once you hit 1 billion oysters. Do you have another project in mind, or are you just focused on the oyster project?
So I'm not running it day to day anymore anyway. Pete is, and he has an amazing team helping them. He and I talked about this the other day. For a while it was sort of that we wanted to get to 1 billion, and that was the goal. And we hadn't even thought about what was next, because that was 2035. we were doing 20 million oysters a year.
Yeah.
The idea of getting to 1 billion by 2035 was really hard and really aspirational. We didn't have a lot of conversations about what comes after that, but they just got a big grant. It's going to allow Billion Oyster Project to get to 1 billion oysters by 2030.
Oh, awesome.
And they're going to continue doing all of the same restoration and all the same education work. So the mission will be equally as important. And so for me, I'm not thinking about, I mean, as I said, I've thought plenty about Billion Oyster Project in other cities or harbor schools in other cities, but I've now professionally kind of moved on and am just standing by to support those two institutions when they need my help.
Yeah. Now, once you surpass 1 billion oysters, are you going to have to change the name to the 2 Billion Oyster Project?
No. It's a good question. I don't think so. We really lucked out with that name. It just kind of touched a nerve in New York City.
Yeah.
It was simple. It was, ambitious. It was a good name for New York City, and the Harbor School is the perfect partner with it. So I think we'll stick with that name.
I like it.
Yeah.
No, I like it. If someone were to come up to you who lives in New York City and they tell you they don't really feel super connected with nature, but they want to be, what is the first thing that you would tell them to try to notice?
I mean, find your closest park. There's so many great parks in New York City. A lot of people who I knew who had great relationships with nature, that was a Rin, I think. Carl will be able to tell us.
I was going to say, I'll get my little app out.
Yeah. I had the hardest time with bird calls. That was when I initially was like, okay, it's not going to be ornithology.
That's not for me.
Yeah, find your local park. That's huge. But a lot of the people who had the best relationship with the natural world in the city who I knew were involved in two different things. One, community gardens. There's a ton of amazing community gardens. They need more young volunteers to go out and work in those. And then the second one is composting. There's, the food waste and the leaves and other park waste, all of that compost is a really great way to connect to and understand ecology in the city. The third is I would try to have as many native plants on my balconies, in my backyards, and on my roof. We lived in Tribeca, and we had a roof on our building, and I grew all 300 oaks from acorns on that roof that I gave out at our wedding.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we gave out to every guest an oak tree that I'd grown on our roof. So you can do it.
That's awesome.
It just takes a little bit extra effort. So use your roof, use your balcony, community garden, composting, the park.
50 oak trees.
50 oak trees. And then also, each waterway has a group now, whether it's Flushing Bay or Newtown Creek, that is called an immigrant weevil. Pale green immigrant weevil.
I really like weevils. They're those with a little nose.
Yeah, they have such good personality.
Oh.
Can you see that? It's a little pale green immigrant weevil. Yeah, they are.
Do they fly?
Yeah, they fly.
Okay.
Yeah, all beetles fly.
What do you think nature needs from us now?
I would like to put it back into the center of our lives, because it is. It ultimately is the most important thing we're living with on this planet, and yet somehow in our educational system, our political system, our commercial system, our businesses, nature is an afterthought. It's on the periphery. I'd like it to be at the very heart of every educational system, every business decision, every home, every political system. That's sometimes that's what Billion Oyster Project tried to do for New York City. Is if you imagine, this never happens, but if you imagine city leaders all sitting around the table trying to make decisions about the future of New York, and that you've got the media people, you've got the Wall Street people, you've got the advertising people, you've got the probably now AI people, you've got tech people all around the table. How do you get nature at the table? And Billion Oyster Project in the end was really kind of a ambassador for nature in New York. I want that everywhere. I want nature to be central to the curriculum in my kids' public school. It's not at all.
Yeah.
I want it to be part of every aspect of our lives, and we can do that. just a commitment to changing how we do business, how we do politics, how we do education. I mean, I really want a nature or earth school that will teach and train young people about their local ecology. So wherever you live, anywhere in the United States, I think you should know what lives around you.
Yeah.
And then you can go do whatever you do, but grounded in ecology. And that ecological foundation, I think, would be transformative, because we would have a lot more understanding of what we're losing or what we have to gain. Like this tiger swallowtail coming right through, it just went right by us. Which needs just one or two kinds of plants to lay its larvae on, and if it doesn't have them, then they can't have their babies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, to lay its eggs on. And so it's just, we know so little. We're going to keep losing nature if we don't understand what she needs and then what it gives us and how it affects us. So put it back into the heart of everything we do.
Yeah, I agree. I think for my last couple of questions, for all the podcast episodes, I ask each of our guests the same 3 questions to gauge what the differences in answers are.
Okay.
So the first one is there something that you wish more people understood about their relationship with nature?
Yeah, I mean, just that every single action we take has an impact. Every mile you drive in your car, every item you buy on Amazon, everything you recycle, every bicycle trip you do instead of a car trip, every action you take has a consequence somewhere on the natural world. Often you don't see it, it's far away. And just if we could live in a way that would reduce those negative impacts on the natural world, the entire world would be so much better off for a much longer period of time. I think that we have, and by the way, this is what Carl has argued more eloquently than anyone. It's not how does nature serve us? It's not what is this, everyone says, is that good? What does that do for me? What is that good for? There are 2 million species we share the planet with. We're never going to understand them all.
Yeah.
But they exist, and we have a moral responsibility to protect them. And the great thing is that in a world where they're protected, it will be more wild, more green, more beautiful for us. So in the end, it's selfish to protect the things we share the planet with.
Oh, for helicopter?
Right, this is the bucolic, quiet Bedford countryside.
I'm really taking it in.
Where is it? I can't even remember what my answer to your question was. Oh, about our obligation to protect all species. Yes. Yeah. Go read Carl Safina. He says it better than anyone else. I mean, I literally, when I read his article about we have a moral obligation to save species, it was so beautiful and so correct.
What emotion do you most associate with nature?
Joy. I get immense joy every time I'm in nature, and it lightens my mood, inspires me, energizes me. Joy.
Excellent. And then final question. What is either your favorite or one of your earliest memories of you in nature?
We had a stream. I grew up on a cattle farm. Spent a ton of time just working with my dad, with cows, sort of surrounded by nature, but not necessarily too connected to all the different species around us. My mom helped me learn sort of all of the trees and plants, but I was with a neighbor, his name was Jody Ligon. We were probably like 10, 9, 8, I'm not sure, I can't remember. But we went just to the creek on our farm, and we had a big net. And we put the net down into the creek and pulled it up, and it was just filled with hundreds of fish and tons of different species. And something about just a muddy creek and like a cow field.
Yeah.
I mean, it was through the woods. But just the immense abundance and diversity that was there that I never knew was there below the surface just really was a real spark for me. I remember that vividly. And then we put a bunch of them in a tank and they all died.
Awesome. And that sparked your love for conservation.
Right. That was sort of the like, enjoy it where it is.
I gotcha.
You don't have to take everything wild. And I also, I caught and picked up every snake I found as a kid. I love snakes, and I was called over to anyone's house if they had a snake in the basement. They had to call me and I'd go get them out. So I loved, I just knew my earliest memories as a kid are like, you have a special relationship to nature. And part of that was a responsibility that sometimes I'd love to shed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like it's been an obligation my whole life. But I've found profound joy and had a career in this work. And so I feel super lucky to have had those experiences young that sparked that in me that have stayed with me to this day.
Yeah, I think it's really funny because you're not the first person who said so many people who are in conservation work and this is a passion for them that started so young. They all had that hobby of going out and catching things and bringing everything home.
Mm-hmm.
Then
right.
Once it didn't work out in their house, that's what kind of led them to study it in the natural environment. I think that's just an interesting kind of pipeline that so many conservationists share.
Right. The terrarium, the aquarium, there's so many cool things that you can get a closer look at, but some people are really good at taking care of those things, and then that becomes kind of a hobby.
Yeah.
You know, like keeping the spiders or the snakes or the butterflies, a lot of people will keep.
Yeah.
I've never been that into that. I sort of like it.
I'm surprised because you love bugs so much.
Well, it's a new thing. It's a new thing, and I love them where they are and the story they tell where they are. Yeah. I don't want them in the house. It's just not really my thing. But I appreciate how people can get into them as the more that it's like anything, the more you spend time with anything, the more affection you develop for it.
Yeah. Is that something that you are interested in going forward, having, like some people specifically raise butterflies to release them into their garden, and there's some butterflies like endangered species and things like that. Is that something you are interested in?
Mm-hmm.
No?
No.
Not at all.
No, I'm interested in planting their host plants.
Mm. So you're more of a plant guy, and then what comes, you welcome.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, this is my terrarium.
Gotcha.
And frankly, I'm already sort of, I'm working with this group called Planet Wild. Mm-hmm. And Planet Wild is leading this nationwide Less Alone, More Life campaign. And that to me is really exciting because it's sort of helping people replicate the experience of providing more room and more plants for more wildlife. Mm-hmm. It's a 12-week campaign. You can sign up, Less Lawn, More Life, go check it out. And it's almost like, it kind of has a feeling almost of like, it's a 12-step process to rid our addiction to the machines and chemicals that we currently manage our natural spaces with.
Yeah.
And to see if there's a way to manage them a little bit more ecologically friendly and to bring wildlife back to your property.
Yeah. This is just a personal question of mine because a few weeks ago, Carl went and gave a talk that was coincidentally called Killer Lawns.
With Perfect Earth.
Yeah.
Van Gaal.
And it was about pesticides and things like that. And he said he got a question from a woman who asked him, like, if I don't use pesticides, how do I keep the dandelions and the weeds out? Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's an inherently wrong way of thinking, or is that something that you think should be kind of re-guided?
I think that we should be more comfortable with biologically diverse lawns. Mm-hmm. So, there's probably 30 species right here in this lawn part. And so that's okay. You can still mow it down. It's still a pretty lawn. So I don't think, dandelions in a lawn, they get mowed down. So I'm not personally concerned about having one species immaculate, perfect lawn. I like a lawn to be beautiful and functional.
Yeah.
And then the second, so I don't think we need to be using any herbicides on a lawn. And then also places that you aren't using the lawn, then you can stop mowing them and start putting in new, more native plants. So I think we should be managing our landscapes without chemicals. I really think we should, and I encourage everybody to try it and see how it goes. People can always go back to chemicals and more machines if they want, but it's really incredible to see what comes up when you stop using the chemicals in the machines.
Yeah. Murray, I think that's all the questions I have.
Great.
For you.
Thank you so much, Maddie. I really enjoyed it.
No, thank you so much. My last thing, do you have any final thoughts, any questions that maybe I didn't ask that were points you wanted to touch on? I would love to see a little bit around your lawn, if that's at all possible. But before I get up, is there any... You promoted...
I promoted Less Lawn, More Life, which is important to do. Promoted the incredible work of the Safina Center. I'm so grateful to be on this podcast with you, and so grateful to Carl and his leadership as a writer and scientist and advocate and friend. I was lucky enough to have dinner with him a couple weeks ago, and just eager to help other people have the experience of bringing nature back into their lawn. And so let's go check out what we have here and see if we can inspire people to do the same.
Yes.
Great.
Let's do it. I'm excited.